There is something sitting on a shelf at your garden center right now. Costs about $5. Comes in a plain bag with no flashy branding. Probably surrounded by $40 bottles of weed killer that you've bought before. Mix it with water. Load it into a basic sprayer. Walk your lawn once. Within 48 hours, every dandelion is black and curling at the edges. Every clover mat is wilting from the stem. Every plantain leaf is dead. And your grass. Your grass is a darker shade of green than it was before you sprayed. Not the same. Greener. Like someone came through and gave it a proper feeding while you slept. That is not a hypothetical. That is plant biology. And once you understand the mechanism behind it, you'll see exactly why the lawn care industry has spent decades making sure you reach for the $40 bottle instead. Before I tell you what this compound is, I need 2 minutes of your attention. Not because I'm dragging this out, because the ratio matters, the timing matters, and if you go by this and start spraying it without understanding a few specific rules, you can cause problems for yourself. I don't want that. So stay with me through the explanation, then I'll walk you through the exact application from start to finish. Let's start with the actual problem, because most people think the problem is that weeds are hard to kill. They're not. There is nothing special about a weed's survival instinct when you compare it to what you can do with ordinary household items. Boiling water poured directly on a dandelion will kill it by morning. Table salt dissolves it from the roots over time. Full-strength household vinegar wipes it out in a day. Weeds are not the challenge. The challenge is what you're trying to kill them while also keeping alive. The grass that's growing 6 inches away from every weed in your lawn. That's the actual problem. Selective weed control. Targeting one type of plant without touching another type of plant that's living in the same 6 square inches. That challenges the entire foundation of the commercial lawn care industry. Because it's a hard problem, and hard problems justify expensive solutions. The market splits into 2 basic approaches. Approach 1. Compounds that destroy everything they contact. These work, but they work indiscriminately. You end up with dead weed, dead grass, bare soil, and a patching job. Approach 2. Synthetic selective herbicides built around chemical families like 2,4-D. These actually do work selectively. Broadleaf plants absorb them and die. Grass handles them without significant damage. But they run $30 to $40 per bottle, and the brands behind them have invested substantial resources in making sure you believe that their specific formulation is the only path to a clean lawn. What neither of those approaches advertises is that there is a third option, one that has been documented in professional turf management literature for well over a century, one that golf course grounds crews have used in their programs for decades while keeping quiet about it at the public level. A naturally occurring mineral compound that your grass treats as a nutrient, while broadleaf weeds treat it as a cellular threat. It's called iron sulfate. You may see it at your garden center labeled as ferrous sulfate, moss killer, or lawn iron. All the same material, all the same result, all sitting there for around $5, while the $40 synthetic herbicide takes up space at eye level. Here's the biology, because this is where the whole thing clicks. Iron sulfate is water-soluble concentrated iron. When you dissolve it and spray it across your lawn, every plant on that lawn receives the same solution. But what happens next depends entirely on what kind of plant each one is. Broadleaf weeds, dandelions, clover, plantain, creeping Charlie, chickweed, ground ivy, have wide, flat leaves with substantial surface area. When the iron solution lands on those leaves, the plant absorbs a significant dose very quickly. At the concentration you're working with, that iron load overwhelms the plant's cellular function. The chemistry stops working the way it's supposed to. Within 24 hours, you see the first visible damage. Within 48 hours, the plant is finished. Grass is a monocot. What that means practically is that grass has narrow, upright blades. Small surface area relative to its root mass. When the same solution lands on grass blades, the plant absorbs some iron, but not at a dose that creates any problem. Instead, the grass uses what it absorbs as a nutritional input. Iron is a required component in chlorophyll synthesis. So while every broadleaf weed on your lawn is undergoing cellular breakdown, your grass is using the same compound to produce more chlorophyll. It gets a deeper green. It gets denser. The weed experiences the iron solution as a fatal overdose. The grass experiences the same iron solution as a nutritional supplement. Same compound, same lawn. Completely different outcomes based on a fundamental difference in plant structure. This is not a trick or an exploit. It is basic plant biology, and it is exactly why professional groundskeepers have kept this in their toolkit, while the retail lawn care industry pointed you toward the $40 aisle. Because you cannot build a recurring revenue program on a $5 mineral compound that most homeowners only need to apply twice a year. You cannot sell a 4-step seasonal treatment plan built around iron sulfate. There's no margin. There's no subscription model. There's no reason for a commercial lawn service to tell you about it when the alternative is charging you $150 to come spray something you could do yourself in 15 minutes. If you have been spending money on branded weed killers every spring and the same weeds come back every summer, you are not dealing with a product that's failing you. You are dealing with a business model that's working exactly as designed. Subscribe to this channel right now. Every video I put out here runs on the same principle. Show you what works, not what's profitable for someone else. No sponsor reads, no affiliate arrangements, no products I have a financial relationship with. Just the information. And drop a comment telling me what weed is giving you the most trouble right now. Dandelions, clover, crabgrass, moss. Whatever it is, tell me, and I'll tell you whether what we're covering today handles it or whether you need a different approach. Application. The ratio is 1 cup of iron sulfate powder per gallon of water. 1 cup. 1 gallon. That is your working concentration. Mix it in a bucket or directly in your sprayer tank and stir until the water shifts to a dark amber brown and there is 0 undissolved material sitting at the bottom. Coverage. 1 gallon of solution covers approximately 200 to 300 square feet at a normal spray density. An average front lawn needs 3 to 4 gallons. Adjust upward for larger properties, scaling the same ratio. Equipment. A pump sprayer, not a hose end attachment. Hose end units dilute the solution at the nozzle and remove your control over concentration. A standard pump sprayer from any hardware store costs around $15 and gives you precise coverage. Set the nozzle to a fine mist. Not a jet. Not a heavy stream that pools on the leaf surface and drips off. A light, even mist that coats the leaves without runoff. Walk slowly and deliberately across the lawn in overlapping passes. You are not targeting individual weeds. That's the entire point. You coat the lawn. The plant biology handles the selection. What would take you 2 hours with a precision spot sprayer takes 15 minutes this way. Timing, early morning or early evening. Not mid-afternoon. Not during peak sun and heat. The solution needs to remain on the leaf surface long enough for the plant to absorb it. High heat evaporates it too quickly. Morning is the strongest window because the natural dew on the leaf surface actually helps the solution adhere and extends the contact time. Critical point. No water on the treated area for at least 24 hours after application. No irrigation system running. No hose. No rain. Check the forecast before you commit to a spray day. If there is any precipitation expected within 24 hours, wait for a clear window. Water on the leaf surface rinses the solution before full absorption occurs. The weeds survive. You repeat the entire process. Do not let that happen. Timeline of results. Within 12 to 24 hours, broadleaf weeds begin showing cellular stress. Dandelion leaves curl inward at the margins and shift from bright green to a dull olive. Clover stems go limp and the leaves develop dark spotting. At the 48-hour mark, most active broadleaf weeds are fully dead or in final decline. And take a look at your grass. It's not the same green it was 2 days ago. Deeper, more saturated in color. Nothing overnight dramatic, but a real, visible improvement. That's chlorophyll production responding to the iron. For lawns with serious weed density, a second application 2 weeks after the first is acceptable. But do not exceed 3 applications per season. Iron sulfate is mildly acidifying to soil. Repeated applications push the pH down over time. 3 per season is the safe ceiling before you start creating a secondary problem. I want to be upfront with you about what iron sulfate does not do. Because you deserve the accurate picture, not just the highlights. Iron sulfate acts on broadleaf weeds. That distinction is not cosmetic. Crabgrass, goosegrass, annual bluegrass, quackgrass, these are grassy weeds. Their blade structure is too close to desirable lawn grass for iron sulfate to distinguish between them. If your primary problem is crabgrass, iron sulfate is not your complete answer. A pre-emergent barrier applied in the right seasonal window is how you handle grassy weed pressure, and I'll cover that in a future video. What iron sulfate is highly effective against? Dandelions, clover, plantain, chickweed, creeping charlie, ground ivy, henbit, wild violet, daisy, and similar wideleaf varieties. If that's your weed profile, this compound eliminates it. Also worth knowing, iron sulfate is one of the most effective moss treatments available. Moss is extremely iron sensitive. A single application turns an active moss patch black within a matter of hours. If you have shaded corners where moss takes hold every spring, iron sulfate solves that completely. Warnings. Pay attention to these. Warning 1. Iron sulfate stains hard surfaces. Concrete, brick pavers, stone pathways, patio surfaces, house siding. The iron compound oxidizes on contact with these materials and leaves rust-colored marks that are very hard to remove. When you spray near edges, slow down and be deliberate. If overspray makes contact with a hard surface, flush it with water immediately. Not in 2 minutes. Immediately. Once the iron oxidizes onto the surface, you're looking at months of staining. Wear old clothes when you apply. Your hands will stain orange without gloves. It fades from skin over a couple of days, but wear gloves and avoid the question entirely. Warning 2. Keep pets and children off the treated lawn until it's completely dry. Under normal conditions, that window is 2 to 3 hours. Iron sulfate is not classified as toxic at lawn application concentrations, but the wet solution can cause mild skin irritation and staining on bare skin and paw pads. Once dry, the lawn is safe. Warning 3. Test your soil pH before you apply. Iron sulfate acidifies soil slightly with each application. If your baseline pH is already sitting below 6.0, additional acidification can push the lawn into a range where grass struggles to absorb the nutrients it needs to grow properly. A basic pH test kit costs $4. The test takes 5 minutes. If your pH is 6.0 or above, apply freely up to 3 times this season. If it's below 6.0, correct the pH problem first, then use iron sulfate on the weeds. Let me tell you about the first time I ran this on my own lawn. because I think it will give you a clearer picture of what to actually expect. I had a clover situation in my front yard that I had been managing badly for 3 full growing seasons. Not scattered clover. Dense, mat-forming white clover covering close to a third of the visible lawn area. I had tried pulling it by hand. It was back within 4 weeks. I tried a concentrated vinegar solution. The clover died. So did the surrounding grass. I ended up with brown bare patches where the clover had been, which looked considerably worse than the clover. I came across iron sulfate in a discussion thread among groundskeepers. Spent about 30 minutes reading through how it worked and why. Mixed a batch the following Saturday morning, loaded the pump sprayer, and covered the front yard. Took me around 12 minutes. The next morning I walked outside, and the clover was already shifting color. Olive brown at the edges. Leaves slightly curled at the margins. By the second morning it was fully dead. Brown, dry, flat on the ground. And the grass growing through the gaps where the clover had been, visibly greener than it had looked in a long time. A neighbor stopped and asked what company I had hired. I told her the total cost was approximately $2. That $2 came after I had spent roughly $95 across 3 years on approaches that failed or made things worse. 30 on vinegar-based products that damaged the lawn alongside the clover. 40 on a branded selective herbicide that required 3 applications and still left visible regrowth. 25 on manual removal tools I used until my knees gave out. Iron sulfate ended the whole thing in 48 hours for $2. And the lawn looked better coming out of it than it had when the clover had started. One last point before I let you go. I think it might be the most important one. Iron sulfate kills what is currently growing in your lawn. It is not a preventive barrier. If the Dandelion 2 Properties Over is broadcasting seeds into your lawn every May, new seedlings will arrive regardless of what you applied last month. Iron sulfate handles the current infestation. A different strategy handles the incoming one. And that strategy comes down to turf density. A lawn that is thick enough, healthy enough, and dense enough leaves no open soil for incoming weed seeds to reach. The weed seed lands. It finds no purchase. It doesn't germinate. That's the end game. That's what we're building here, video by video. Last week was soil pH, the foundation that determines whether your grass can access nutrients at all. This week is the weed elimination layer. Next week is the mowing protocol that produces the turf density where incoming weeds lose before they start. These aren't standalone videos. They connect. Each one builds on the last. Together they form a lawn care system that runs for under $20 a year and outperforms professional services that charge $200. Subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to be missing pieces of that. And post a comment right now. Tell me what your most persistent weed problem is. If you have a photo, post it. I read every comment, and I'll tell you directly whether iron sulfate is your answer or whether your specific weed situation calls for a different approach. See you next week.